How did this guy blow up his YouTube channel into a full-blown media empire, generating millions of dollars for his real estate business? Well, it all started with some advice that he was kind of reluctant to take.
And he said, take your cell phone, go do some tours of areas and watch what happens. So I gave it a try and I put out 100 videos in 100 days and they were horrible. I had this guy call me like 2.5 months in from the UK and he's like, I love your content. Fast forward now 7 years later, we've got 53 people that work for me, 9 million in revenue last year.
Ken Pozek had just moved to Orlando and was looking for some new ways to create leads. But when his channel took off, his mission completely changed.
For the longest time, it was like very self-serving for me to say like, oh, I want to help people buy and sell houses. And so now I'm like, my why is actually to help Orlando become the next great American city.
Now Pozek Group is a full-scale media empire fueling millions of dollars into their real estate business and shaping the future of Orlando's market. In this conversation, you're going to hear his secrets for how to keep people watching.
But by then I'm getting a 70% watch time, which is insane.
How he landed a video tour of Shaquille O'Neal's house.
Most of the time people like that say no. Thankfully she said yes, and it became our most popular video.
And to be honest with you, we went kind of deep.
Oh man, that's a great question. That is a deep one, Heather. So
this, my friends, is the guy they say that if Walt Disney had a great grandson to sell real estate, it'd be Ken Pozek. All right, Ken, somebody's sitting on an airplane with you and they look over and they say, what do you do for a living? How do you respond to that?
I say the easiest way is real estate. I'm in real estate, but I sell the city of Orlando.
I was going to say, you're lying there. You do a lot more than that. I've been really sitting with these terms, entrepreneurial, creative, and then a creative entrepreneur. And I'm curious what you identify as. Do you feel like you're a creative who's entrepreneurial, or do you feel like you're an entrepreneur who's really creative?
I am a creative that would only do creative work for a living forever if I got paid well. And so I had to figure out a way to get monetized somehow. And so we've been figuring that out along the way.
Really? That surprised me because I was literally thinking, I was answering for you. I was like, he's going to say he's an entrepreneur first because your whole life you've been doing real estate and you've done really, really well at it. So I assume this is where Heather comes in assuming stuff. I assume that when you started the marketing stuff and it worked, you kind of tapped into the creative work, but you think you've been a creative all along.
Yeah, I think so. I just love it. Like when I relocated from Detroit to Orlando and I had to let I've been in real estate for 22 years. So I had a huge real estate like friendship group and I needed to let them know that I was in Orlando. And so I was like, I got a camera. Like I've got a cool camera. I'm going to go take photos at like Disney and all the cool stuff for Orlando and just like show people that I live here. And like, this is before I was doing video or any of that. And so I just like fell in love with it. And the more I got into creative, the more I like went down the rabbit hole of what's available to me. And the more I was like, this is who I am. Like the whole, like, what would you do if you won a lottery? Like I would create content.
Yay. Oh, you're my people. You're my people. It's like it's a bug that bites you and some people have it and some people don't, that's for sure. Okay, so I would venture to say, were very successful before creating content in the real estate world. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. 2016, I did like 7 figures in revenue. And my wife and I were like, and that was all from old school stuff, like phone prospecting, door knocking, open house. Like I just like a normal real estate agent. And so, but we were doing really well. And so we came to Orlando to buy a second home to like maybe Airbnb out. And my wife and I were at the pool and she's like, what if we just moved here and this became our life? And I was like, that would be insane. And she's like, let's do it. I was like, you're crazy. I'm not leaving behind. I'm finally, doing really well in Detroit. But she was right. She's like, listen, our kids are young. Why not do it while they're young? Let's get, somewhere that we want to be more established and, enjoy the sun. So we moved here and I tried to kick back my business up and through the old school ways that I knew, phone prospecting, door knocking and all that. And a friend of mine was like, you know what, you should try this YouTube thing. Like you're understanding your camera, you're taking photos and this and that. I was like, people aren't going to call me from YouTube. And he said, no, like, take your cell phone, go do some tours of areas and do all this other stuff and watch what happens. I've been doing this for the past year. And dude, I'm telling you, people call me. I was like, okay. So I gave it a try. This was in 2018. And I put out 100 videos in 100 days, and they were horrible. A lot of them are still up on my YouTube channel. And it was just me, my cell phone, and iMovie on my Mac, just like, doing my best. And I had this guy call me like 2.5 months in from the UK. And he's like, I love your content. I want to move to this area in Orlando. I want to buy a second home. And I was like, oh, snap, I'm onto something. And so fast forward now, 7 years later, we've got 53 people that work for me. We did like 9 million in revenue last year. And, we help people from all over the world find home in Orlando. And we do a lot more than that now, but it's been kind of a cool journey to see how it went from like a guy that, it's phone prospecting to where now I'm known for content marketing.
Hell yeah, man. Congratulations. That's so badass. What does your content look like now? So what are you guys putting out on a weekly basis? Who's involved in the team? Give me an overview.
Yeah. So we've got 3 videographers on staff, a short form editor on staff who like I'll go, we say like, so on Thursdays, I go live on my YouTube channel and I'll have hundreds of people show up to watch live and then thousands of people that will watch afterwards. But we take that one piece of content and it's like 45 minutes long. I'll go live for, and I just talk about the news of Orlando, but then tie it back to home ownership. So like right now, a big topic, the governor's trying to get rid of real estate tax in the state of Florida and push it more towards sales tax. Okay, well, what would that do for Orlando if that happened? Or what had that would do for Florida if that happened? And so I'll talk about that stuff. And then we take that same piece of content, we rip the audio and we put it on for our podcast. And then we rip it up into another, 8 to 10 pieces of short form content. And then my staff takes it and turns it into blogs and our newsletter, which has like 46,000 people that get it now. Yeah. And the only sponsor for any of that is my real estate company, and then now our mortgage company and some of our other ways that we're vertically integrating our business. And so we put out 200 to 300 pieces of content a month, depending on how crazy things are.
I am open to being super wrong on this, and please tell me if you have a different mindset on it. When I hear you talking about, I'm going to go live and I'm going to rip it apart and we're going to spread it out, like, I've had people say that to me so much where I feel like, oversimplify it in the sense of like, I'm going to hit live and go live all the time and just like repurpose things. And what happens is like their feed is just like these crazy ass pieces of content. There's no context. It's just not produced. It's literally like taking like an hour-long conversation that you have with somebody and then just using AI to cut it up into 85 pieces and put it out there, and people think it works. Tell me if I'm wrong on this, but I'm guessing maybe there's a little more thought and structure behind ripping something up and sharing it everywhere.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, so it is the hook and like where in the piece of content, where in the 45 minutes. And now like I've slowed down to understand that my editors will be appreciative if I like repeat someone's question back or be like, here's an interesting point about Orlando. And then I'll ask somebody or respond to someone's question or the story. So I'll try to set it up in my mind as I'm going live to make it a really easy hook for them to then use later. But no, they chop that conversation up and make it what might be a 2-minute conversation about a story and make it 30 seconds. And then they're adding in visuals along the way. A lot of it's all like, I've got these videographers that are flying around Orlando now and, B-roll that we've gone and collected ourselves around this new story. Like there's a new freeway that's coming in. It's a huge one, which will make interconnectivity around Orlando really massively great. And so I'll be talking about the story, talking ahead like this, but my guy will go out and get drone footage of them putting it in. And so it is that visual hook. It is that auditory hook. We put it up top now above my head. It'll say like, XYZ coming to Orlando. So hopefully stop the scroll. So there's a lot that goes into it. Like it's not just literally like a Opus. I think Opus, whatever, is one of those things where the AI will just grab 10 clips and you throw it up. We're a bit more purposeful than that.
Yeah, the frame is so important. You're talking about obviously the end game is for folks to come to you guys when they want to buy or sell a house. That's the end game. But when you're talking about your videos just now, you haven't yet mentioned, a hard CTA or information around houses or buying or selling. You're talking about a freeway that's coming in or a new law that's passed and so forth. Talk to me about the mindset around that, because I know, the creative entrepreneurs listening here, they're thinking, how in the world does all this work? Because it's work, Oh, oh my God, I'm
Yeah.
twitching right now. Lead back to the business side to things when you're not talking about your business.
Yeah. So on the when I go live, I'll break in the middle, and we will do a CTA. Hey, so I say basically the same thing every time. Hey, listen, this if you got any value out of this, my real estate team and I, we've got over 1,500 5-star reviews over on Google. Check us out if you're looking to sell or buy a house anytime in Central Florida. We're here to help. Visit theorlandoreal.com/YouTube. That's like
Oh, you
my
got that
my read.
memorized.
I've done that so many times, right? I've done that read so many times. And so that's it. Like it's the jab, 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 right hook. I'm just trying to like value, be the knowledge broker, like keep pushing out so that people look to me as not just the real estate guy, but the all things Orlando guy. And this kind of idea came to me because I would sell a house to somebody and then realize I had no value to give them until it was time to go sell their house 7 years
Yeah.
later on average. And so, how do I stay connected and valuable in their life in that entire time to where not only there was a stat that came out from the National Association of Realtors that said that like 82% of people would reuse their realtor again if they could only remember their name. And so, like,
Dang.
like we put all like real estate agents and business owners in general, like we have ego around stuff like, oh, I did a great job. Of course they're going to remember me. But like, they just don't. Like 7 years goes by like that, and they're like off to the next guy that they met at the golf club and or the gal at school or church, and then you're like, okay, that's who they use. And so that was my idea on it, and then all of a sudden it started taking on a life of its own. And so now we've interviewed mayors and like multiple billionaires have reached out to be on the podcast, and we've gotten just really cool connections to where now like we're permeating every part of my city. And through that, every once in a while, I'm just throwing out like, I'm a real estate agent. This is what I do. And if you go anywhere online, it's not like I hide it. And we're very easy to go on our bio or our website and like click here to buy or sell with us. And so that's kind of it.
Why do you think more folks don't do what you guys are doing? I don't mean necessarily just in the real estate space, but I call him Uncle Gary. Uncle Gary says to be the mayor of your city and to do
Right.
exactly what you guys are doing, and you guys are executing on it, and you have the receipts, like the young kids say, to prove that what you're doing is working.
Yeah.
What's coming up for me is like, why do more people not do this?
I think there's two reasons. One, it's a long play. Like I put out 100 videos in 100 days, and then the one that hit for me, it was like, oh, that one's actually very different than all the crap I'm putting out. So instead of a video a day, like I'm going to go back to like once a week and see how that works. But then I was like, I got to lead a month. Like a lead a month is not a lot. And then it was like a lead a week, and then a lead a day. And then it was like dozens of leads a day, right? But that took 5 years to get there. And it's like, most agents or by business owners are like, I need business today. And so I was doing all the videos while I was also doing all the old school stuff that felt very
Yeah.
soul sucking to me. So I was willing to put in the suck to see if this worked. So that's one. And two, in my business, it's easy for lenders and real estate agents to go get in partnership with like Zillow or Redfin or all these other different places where you can just buy the business, you can buy the leads.
Yeah.
But here's a problem with that: is A, it's expensive. B, they have no affinity to you as a business person. You are a commodity to them. You open a door, you write a contract, they think you're overpaid, all that kind of stuff. Whereas for what we do is like, hey, I've been giving you value for sometimes years. And so they come in already bought into this. But again, it's so many at bats for me that to me it was worth it. But for most people, they look at that as like this insurmountable thing to build.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why they choose the easier route.
Damn. This reminds me of, I want to say it was Matthew Dix. He wrote Storyworthy. When I asked him about the ideation process and really being unique in writing, he's a professional storyteller. He talked about the edges of an idea. And so we have like that core idea, and then to be able to expand, like what is on the edge of that? And what's kind of like if you think of a mind bubble. And when studying you and what you guys are doing or whatever, it's like you have the core thing, which is buying, selling homes, but you've been brave enough to go on the edges of the idea to think about all the other things that folks are interested in and how can I add value to them so that, to your point, they remember me for years and years to come. Talk a little bit more about that, because I think high level that makes sense to anybody listening, but in practice, it's a little bit different when you're trying to think through, how do I continually serve this database of people so they remember my name? how do you guys stay relevant? Like, where do your ideas come from? How do you conceptualize all of that?
Yeah, the idea is like I pay for permitting data. I have like news alerts set up for literally on everything Orlando, but I mean I systematize it in my daily and weekly calendar, and so I have time blocks set up that say like my study and research time where, and it used
Oh
to be at
yeah.
like 1 a.m. because I was so busy doing other stuff, and now we've like leveraged to the point where it's literally in my calendar to go research. And so for me, coming up with topics is actually really easy because I've kind of got a skill now. So I pay for permitting data. I'll go back through and say which companies are investing in different areas and what are they doing. I'll call them up. Hey, I noticed that you're spending potentially $50 million on this build out. What are you guys doing? And at this point,
You'll call them
like,
on the phone and say that?
yeah.
Hell yeah.
So it's like literally because so in the permitting data, it says who their architect is, who their design firm is, who the GC on the deal is. And I'll just call them up and say, like, hey, I mean, like Disney and Universal, they don't answer. Right. And so I'll have to
Yeah.
kind of go through the tea leaves and I'll just do my best. But many people want to talk about it. Like they're excited. Hey, I'm investing $100 million in this new build out of this hospital. Right. And so what's amazing with that is now I'm getting insight into all of like where job creation is happening. And so you talk about going to the edges. Like I think like Simon Sinek's Begin with Why. And for the longest time, it was like very self-serving for me to say like, oh, I want to help people buy and sell houses. Like, cause that was just, it just sounds like it's more me, right? It's not as much them. And so now I'm like, you know what? No, I figured it out. Like my why is actually to help Orlando become the next great American city. And if I do that, I'm going to create more jobs. I'm going to make it a place where my kids don't need to leave to go find opportunity. And we're going to hopefully become a more inclusive community that has a lot of cool things going on other than just hospitality. And so now like that encompasses so much more than just buying and selling real estate. And I
Yeah.
can monetize it through this thing that I've done for the past 20 years. And so, yeah, that's, I guess, hopefully I answer the question well enough there.
It does, but it brings up something else. And we're going to go deep real quick and then we'll get out of it in here in a second. But I was just talking to somebody about this earlier about kind of an expanded vision. I get really stuck sometimes in the weeds with things because I'm very, I don't want to say OCD, but maybe a little bit.
Sure. Just
And
touch.
anytime you read any freaking book, it's always like the service piece. And that it sounds
Mm,
like a cute fuzzy wuzzy, but in all reality, you just hit on it. In order to really be effective, we need to expand our vision to a service outside of ourselves.
yeah.
Now, let's couple that with what you said earlier about before things started kicking off for you and rolling. Like right now, you guys are doing pretty great. And I know you have vision to expand and all that, but you have team, all these things in place where you can execute on some of these bigger vision stuff.
Yeah.
When you're in the trenches and you're making the phone calls and you're doing the open houses and you're doing the crap work that you hate, expanding that vision and investing time into something that doesn't have that immediate ROI. I think that's where we lose sight of it and we give up, and it gets
Mm.
really, really discouraging because there has to be a parallel there of equal attention. And I'm just curious, like, how you wrestled with that maybe at the beginning before your YouTube started working and before you became known for this and so forth. You have a family too, and you have to freaking pay bills. And so it's like, y'all catching a theme here, y'all. Investing time in content when it's not necessarily paying your bills or you don't see the ROI on it. What was those early days like for you?
Yeah. So I think it's two things. Like, one, do you believe it works? Has there been anybody in the world to do it once and it's worked? At the time, like
Yeah.
8 years ago, Heather, like there were not a lot of real estate agents doing what I'm doing today. Now there's courses on it and people are trying it in all different markets. And like they're calling me, and I traveled like 32 times last year teaching people what I do now, but there wasn't me at the time to teach me. So now I'm like, hey, okay, great. Listen, this actually works in real estate. You can do it as well. So it's having that belief that if I put the time in that I will get a result as long as I don't give up. I think that's
Yeah.
really huge. But before it was like carving it out where you can. Like I didn't, right now I spend like a day and a half a week on content. I didn't have a day and a half before. It was like 30 minutes to shoot a video super quick in between appointments. And then I would tuck my kids in and I'd kiss my wife and I'd go edit until literally 1 a.m., back up at 6:30 the next morning. And I just did that for years.
Yeah.
And so like, I think it's an uncommon practice to like just keep rolling with it and have this like unwavering belief that you're going to figure it out.
Hey, freaking man. You mentioned earlier, and I actually was going to ask you about this, the one video a week thing. I think that's really an interesting choice because
Mm.
most folks' advice in this space is more, 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 you know? But you guys, it's working. So why not more? Why are you doing one video a week?
So it was one video a week for the first maybe 4.5 years. And then we have gone to two. So on Tuesday, I put out typically my more produced video where I have the videographer follow me around. We do a deep dive into a city or an area. And I just talk about all things, the homeowners association, yes, and different home style types, yes. But I try to tie in some storytelling. And then Thursday is where I go live and I just kind of like hang out with
Yeah.
the audience, right? And so
Yeah.
now we do two. And we did push it to three and we tried four. And for one, it was a burnout situation for me, but I just noticed the ROI was dwindling. So like we found that like one was maybe not enough. Two is probably sweet spot for us. And so like that Tuesday, Thursday upload schedule has been great. And then I noticed that like though we were missing out on opportunities. So I started bringing in my team members and we kicked up a second channel that's doing one video a week and keeping that cadence. And so now like my thought pattern is if someone goes to Google or YouTube or other places and they're searching around stuff in Orlando, that I'm not just the first, but then my second channel is the second and my third channel is the third. And so we built out
Yeah.
this media company to sort of help us out. But again, it all started with just one a week. And so I think that that's the other thing is like I wasn't doing short form. I wasn't doing anything. It was one YouTube video very consistently. And then I led with revenue. It was like I had a couple closings, then I hired an editor. And then 3 years later, I hired somebody to follow me around on contract, my videographer, who was also an editor. And then eventually got to a place where like, I need a videographer on staff. And then it was like, you know what? Now my team's growing. I need two and then three. So it's like, but it was very much so like sequential, leading with revenue, not getting over my head so that we could grow it profitably and sustainable.
Did you study any kind of filmmaking, storytelling pieces? Like, or is this instinct or, because the videos, dude, are really, really freaking well done.
Oh, thank you.
I remember, I think it's just common knowledge, but in the film space, people always talk about, it's a good edit when you don't know it's edited, and
Sure.
your edits are so seamless. And my husband and I were watching, God, was it Nightmare Kitchen or something yesterday? And it was like this 20 years old man. And I couldn't believe the editing, like the jump cuts and how flashy it was. And I was like so jarred. And I was amazed how far we've come in the editing space. And it was so contrast to when I watched your channel. It felt so breathable. And there was a lot, like the B-roll made sense with what you were saying. It wasn't
Mm,
just like shit put in there, people
yeah.
do. All that to say, like it's very intentional. It's very filmmaking. I was wondering, like, have you studied filmmaking? How have y'all crafted this?
Yeah, it started just, I mean, my obsession with Peter McKinnon and like Casey Neistat, like the OGs
Yeah,
YouTubers, like
yeah,
they were just so good.
yeah.
And then it's kind of gone along. So we do a Monday morning quarterback where we kind of go back through and we look at our stuff from the previous week and we look at the click through rate, we look at the attention graphs and where do people fall off. And so we just have kind of gotten this idea of like storytelling to where it's like it should make sense. It shouldn't feel like I'm jarring you around too much. And but really like the outline for the pre-shoot is pretty simple. The only thing I script is the hook. Like the first 10 to 15 seconds, I have that actually scripted out. The rest of it is just bullet points where I'm going to throw in my subscription and then where the outro is going to go. And then maybe like 4 or 5 different, in my mind, B-roll shots. But most of the stuff we do it in the field. So I'm telling my videographer, like when I'm out and it shouldn't be my face the whole time. Like I heard somebody talk about Christopher Nolan's Oppenheimer. And if you watch that video or that movie, it's 3 hours long. The average shot length is 3 seconds, but like it just kind of takes you it doesn't feel jumpy. And after 3 hours, you're like, it was 3 hours. Like it's just a
Yeah,
very
yeah.
easy movie to watch. And so I tell my team that like we should be trying to change it up every 3 to 4 seconds if we have to keep the attention span going. But then when we're out in the field, I'm like, make sure you get that. And I'm talking about this. So make sure you hit it from there. And do you see that angle? Like that looks really cool. If I was here in person, I would want to see that. And how does that correlate back to our videos? And so we've put out 550 YouTube videos, I think, at this point. So just time on task over time, we've gotten really good.
You just said something really interesting. You said, I would want to see that. So are you thinking more along the lines of what makes sense for Ken and like your own, what it's entertaining and interesting for you, or are you in the
Yeah.
psychology of your viewer?
No, I mean, the channel's made up for the psychology of the viewer, and so like we've tried. It's funny. I tried to take the channel a different direction a couple of years ago, maybe 18 months ago, and I wanted to make it more Philip DeFranco because I was a big fan of his early on, where it's just newsy and just it's constant stuff talking about the
Yeah.
news. And I was like, hey, I'm already doing this live where I talk about the news, so people should love this. And for whatever reason, it those were the worst performing videos I'd ever made. Like I
Really?
was used to getting like 10, 20,000 views. These were getting like 1,000. And I'm like, okay, we're
Huh.
going to scrap that idea, right? So I do try to respect the viewer and the subscriber. I think that's like one of the most important things to think through. If they gave you the subscribe, respect it. And so I think about that in the future. And then when I'm out there, though, I'm just thinking about, okay, great. I'm my own subscriber. What would I be interested in? And then when I'm
Yeah.
there, I'm trying to walk them through that process.
You said another really good thing is the Monday throwback
Quarterback.
quarterback.
Mm-hmm. Monday
One
morning
of those
quarterback.
two. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Man, this is something I really have to get better at. Brendan Kane, he was on the show. He studies virality, and
Yeah,
that was one of his big call outs was, we people in the content space are like, batch, you need to batch everything. And he said, no, because if you're not constantly going back and looking at what's working, how do you make revisions?
that's
And
right.
I'm curious, like, what comes up over and over and over again in your iterations? Like maybe some small micro things that you're constantly needing to adjust.
It starts with the thumbnails. Like some stuff just works. Like for a while, we got on a really good tear for using AI backgrounds. Like they were just different. And then like
Yeah.
all of a sudden they stopped working. And I was like, if I had just been sending the same thing over and over again, I wouldn't have paid attention to the click through rate. Beyond that, it was kind of like the length of the videos. Like the longer I can make them, the better that they do. And so like we've been constantly trying to figure out, is it 8 minutes? Is it 13 minutes? Is it 15 minutes? Okay, let's bring that back. And so that's the number one thing we play with is just like, how much did I show up with the value that I'm bringing and how long can I make the video so that YouTube's pushing it out to more people? But I think that those are like the big two for me.
I know hooks are like the sexy thing. Everybody's like, how do I hook attention? I'm so
Yeah.
freaking nerded out and fascinated with like, how do you keep attention and
Mm.
how do you, I guess, create hooks after the hook? You know,
Yeah.
what have you guys learned?
Yeah, I think it is like reiterating and saying like, hey, at the end, this is a good example for you. So I'm a real estate agent, obviously. Home tours are to me kind of boring. And so, but my sellers really wanted them. And I realized that I wanted more seller business because it was very marketing focused and kind of a cool thing. And so I would try home tours and they would bomb because people, once they see the kitchen and the master bath, they're like, I'm kind of done. So then I said, well,
Interesting.
people really like seeing areas though. And so what if I made a hook to where I'm like, my newest listing is a lakefront. I'm going to show it to you at the end of the video. But in the meantime, let me show you the area. And so I'll start really wide and bring it in focused. And so like Mr. Beast talks about this in the ways that he creates videos. Like he's constantly doing the callback, rehooking to watch towards the end, right? And so me,
Wow.
like that's the way that we do our videos and our area tours now, which is cool because now we're getting buyer leads from Europe and seller leads from local. We're like, hey, we're in call it the Windermere City. This is like where all the sports players live and Shaq lives and Tiger lives. It's really, really cool. But then let me take you into the neighborhood. And here's why the neighborhood's amazing because it's got the golf course. But stay tuned because at the end, I'm going to show you my newest listing for $2.3 million. It's freaking incredible. And then now 66% of the way in, I finally show the house. And I start with the
Yeah.
cool stuff, like it's the kitchen, it's the pool, it's all the stuff that matters to the typical home buyer, whether you're in the market to buy or now or not. And then it peters off into some other more uninteresting things. And so, but by then I'm getting a 70% watch time, which is insane, right? And so that's the way that I think about it is just like, how can I take those little things that I want people to watch and put them towards the end, consistently call towards it, and hopefully that works. Beyond that, I think it's just finding stuff that's outside of the normal that I find interesting. So if I do an area tour, like the 7 things that I find interesting, don't talk about like just the location. Talk about like, hey, did you know the architect on this building specifically? He actually got flown in from France. And here's some of the other work that he's done. Like nobody's heard that before on anywhere, right? But it's like going a little
Yeah.
bit deeper and more like it's what you do with your content. Like I've read some of the books you talk about before, but the way that you approach it and tie in other stuff makes it more watchable and the retention's higher. So I'm not teaching you anything there, but those are some of the thoughts I consider.
What comes up for you when you're talking is like he does a hell of a lot of learning and research. And you said he had these time box spaces. And I feel like that is one of the most underrated content marketing hacks ever because people always like go into like AI and how can we make this more efficient? And folks who are really, really good who I talk to, all of y'all have some kind of rhythm and system in place for writing and research and just doing the freaking work. And it's so unsexy and it's not, it's hard. It's
Yeah.
not hard. Like I enjoy it, but it takes freaking discipline to do it.
In that though, I get excited. Like if I find something that nobody else has talked about,
Yeah.
or I find something that I find interesting, it's going to come across way better on video than me just
Yes.
reading off a script that ChatGPT created. And so it's just, for me, I love that part because I'm so excited to share with the audience. And through that, I think it comes across really authentic because it is.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. Are you guys using AI at all in your process?
No, I mean, sometimes we'll try to throw it like data sets, like I'll pull stuff from the MLS or like permitting data,
Yeah.
and I will use ChatGPT to like, hey, tell me what you think this means beyond just like the simple stuff. So I'll use it
Yeah.
for that. Like I'm not anti AI at all. It's just I'm not going to lean on it really heavily to create my content for me.
Dude, I'm the same way. And sometimes I worry, I'm like, am I behind on things or am I being stubborn? But I'll
Mhm.
use it in my business. I'll use it for a variety of things. But when it comes to the creative element, I think I'm a little like protective of it because I enjoy it so much and it's so
Sure.
fun and interesting. But yeah, I'm kind of glad you answered that way. It makes me feel less that. How in the world did y'all get into Shaq's house? I'm curious about that.
So I mean, his house was on the market for years, and a new agent had taken it over, and I was like, hey, I've got the largest real estate channel in Orlando, like would you like me to come
Yeah.
feature it? And here, I'll tell you, most of the time people like that say no, and it's just like a hard, especially like Shaq's house, like no. But thankfully she said yes, and it became our most popular video, and it was just kind of like, hey, let me tour it around, let me show off what's going on. But I'll tell you, I mean, I've asked probably to get there, I had dozens of other no's to get the one yes. And so there's a lot of cool stuff we're
Yeah.
getting ready to put out, and relationships we're now creating through content that I've had to ask 20, 30, 40 times to get one yes. And I think that that's another thing, like as a bit of a hack that I learned from phone prospecting years ago, which was like, hey, you don't call one and get a yes. You call 30 to 40 to get a yes. And like, that's got to be okay. And so, yeah, the more at bats, the better you do.
Talk to me about the self-conscious piece because whether it is calling somebody and getting a no, whether it's putting your face on a YouTube video and being yourself because I don't know you, but I know you're being yourself. I can tell that you're
Yeah.
being yourself in the video, which is really cool. And that takes an element of subtleness of self to be able to do that, to hear no's, to get rejected, yada, 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 yada. And that's folks' biggest hang up. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I'm guessing you didn't come out of the womb like on camera knowing what's up with this stuff. This has been a
No.
skill set you've developed over time. So, high level, what are some takeaways you've learned about just getting over yourself and putting yourself out there in this way?
Yeah, and I mean, especially watching back our videos, I still say like, "Oh, why did I say it that way?" Or like, "I got to stop doing that with my
Dude.
face." Like, it just happens, right? The one thing I hear from a lot of business owners that I get up and I'll do Q&As or whatever. They're like, "I just don't like how I look on video," or like, "My voice just
Yeah.
sounds weird when I'm on
Yeah.
camera." And I'm like, "Honey, that's how you look, and that's how you sound." And so and nothing, you don't like
Yeah.
hide who you are when you get in front of a client. So why would you hide who you are when you get on video? Just show up and be yourself. And they're like, well, that still doesn't make the nerves go away. I'm like, listen, I still get nervous from time to time. But here's the good news. Nobody sees your early videos anyways. It's like
Preach.
you and your mom get to watch the video and then eventually 10 people and then 100 and then 1,000 and then hopefully millions. But like, early on, nobody's watching anyways. And so, like, this is your time to mess up, and you just
Yeah.
get a little bit better every time and trust the process. And like, it's the people that actually do that that get really, really good. And the ones that don't and they don't believe that it's possible, they give up and they go back to doing
Yeah.
whatever they were doing before.
Preach, 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 preach. You mentioned earlier y'all started. I'm just trying to get as many questions in as I can. I have so many
You're
things.
so good at questions.
I'm so curious. This is just fascinating. I remember us connecting, I don't know, several months ago, and I don't know why. Maybe one of your posts came up or whatever. And I knew a little bit about what you did, but I didn't really understand the extent of it. And when I started going, like, looking at your channel and stuff, I was like, damn, this dude is running a freaking media company. He's like in disguise as a real estate agent. This is fascinating. But one of the things that you mentioned earlier is you said that you'll have these separate channels that you're starting. And I've
Mhm.
noticed, you're bringing in other agents or partners or
Yeah.
something to kind of co-host with you or whatever. And a friend of mine who owns a marketing agency, we've been talking a lot about, building in other personalities into your brand from a strategy perspective. Just it gives you more content, but also too, if something, you know, Jane never quits, the whole brand doesn't go with Jane. There's a whole narrative there. And then parallel that with, kind of the entertainment space. When we watch TV shows, there's multiple characters, and sometimes you relate to one character versus the next. And I'm not sure if that's what you guys are going for, your mindset behind introducing more people and more channels and all of that. I'm guessing, again, Heather's assumptions
Yeah.
should be a sideshow. But yeah, I just threw up all over you, Ken. Tell me y'all's reason for bringing in more people.
Yeah, I mean, partly is I just need to clone myself because I feel like what I have found is like good quality content, and we have it's interesting. Like, we have a brand new channel, like brand new. You can look at it; it's like 2 or 3 months old. We've posted like 6 times, and some of those videos are getting like 5, 10,000 views already because we kind of figured out the formula. Yeah, we've already kind of figured out the YouTube formula. And so what I was thinking was like, I need to clone myself, and because I can't just do more content myself. I only have so many hours in the
Right,
day,
right, right.
and so that was cool. And then I also knew, like, just having realized, like, again, respect the subscriber. Like, there's other cool stuff going on in Orlando that I want to talk about, or I think should be talked about, that it doesn't match on my main channel. And so Gary Vee had this really good, Uncle Gary had a good reel the other day. Was like, he hired this new girl, and she was saying like, hey, stop throwing everything in one bucket. You got to pull some of this apart. And so I'm like, all right, well, like, there's theme park stuff here. There's like history of, like, there's a whole niche genre that just doesn't fit on my main channel. Let's break it off and put it over here. And then, hey, let's take some of the other people that are on my team that have earned the right by going on their own Instagram and their own TikTok to try at least to where now they get the right to get in front of my staff
Yeah.
and my crew. And so let's get some leads there. And through all of this, we're kind of consistently just pushing one sponsor, which is our real estate firm. And so far, it's worked really, really well. And then now, if I'm on vacation, I don't have to worry about, I didn't shoot last week, or we're like a couple weeks in advance now, but
Right,
like, I can
right.
say, hey, Kristen, can you go jump in and do this video? And we can keep rolling. It is interesting though, because to tangent from your tangent is like, you ever watch that show where like your favorite character's arch nemesis from high school shows up or something like that, and you're like, oh, I hate that person. It just doesn't feel
Sure.
like I want my normal four guys at the bar that hang out. Like, that's my normal show,
Yeah.
but you're introducing
Yeah.
people that I don't really like. So I have noticed that early on, when I would introduce people, especially like on my lives, that retention and viewership went down by like 30%. And
Interesting.
it's so interesting. And so now I'm really, really protective on who comes on my lives. And I push some of our other agents to some of our other channels because they do better there, because people aren't just used to seeing my face. And so it's been this constant like push and shove to see what we can make work.
I wonder if there's some psychology in that. I've got to go down a rabbit hole with that, because if you think about, I'm always doing like parallels. I think regular marketing is just so boring.
Yeah.
I love looking at entertainment and figuring out how do we learn for what people have been studying for years in the entertainment space and bring that into marketing. And I know there has to be something with script writing where you introduce new characters into established TV shows, and how do you build likability and trust. I'm going to go down a rabbit hole. We'll figure that out, y'all. We'll come up with something and learn about that.
That
That's
I would love to
fascinating.
study that with you. I would love to
I know,
study it.
isn't
If you
that
find some good
interesting?
books. Yeah, no, it is because like I think the one thing that we've realized is that a lot of people are attracted to work with my firm, like on the agency side. Like they want to come work for me because of our
Yeah,
content. And then they come here and I'm like, oh, like I can't just have you jump in and like, but I want to because I want to grow this thing. And so, yeah, I'd love to learn alongside with you as you figure that out.
that's my next question. I wanted to ask you about the decision making process and like when to pivot and adjust and when to say no and when to say yes because you know you're a businessman at the end of the day and your company is sponsoring all of this media and oh my God. There's so many different directions you could go. And I always hate when people come to you like, I have an idea. We should do this. And it's like, of course, add it to the list of all these
Yeah,
ideas because there's so much. There's so much. And then having really intentional focus on this is my lane. This is what I'm doing. And I'm going to get better and better and better at this while, comma, still being open to the whispers of God or universe or whatever that's nudging
yeah,
you to shift and adjust and change. I've found that so interesting in my life, and I usually err towards do the same thing over and over again. And I'm trying to remain more open, but in a very calculated way, if that makes sense. So
sure.
you guys have been doing out, one video. I think you put out a couple of newsletters a week, something like that,
Mhm.
multiple short form videos. Y'all have a rhythm in place that's working. When new things are run across your table or you have an idea in the middle of the night, like what filter do you run that through to know if you should pivot or just stay focused?
Gosh, that's a great question. And it's something that I continually try to improve on because I feel like opportunities, like, air quotes, opportunities are abundant. And I could do so many
Yeah.
things. And yet, like, what's the thing that I should focus on the most? And so, like last year, we launched a mortgage company. And so, I'm not a mortgage person. Like, I have my license now, but like, I don't do mortgages. Like, but I realize that we have hundreds of people that reach out to us to buy a house every month. And if I could give them incredible service, and just refer off our mortgage company and say like, hey, like if you want a second opinion, no harm, no foul if you say no, but we own a mortgage company as well. And so now I have the same lead that I can now help twice. And then I'm like, okay, well, I would say 30% of our home sellers, they need our handyman. Like our handyman's booked up 3 months in advance. And that's probably a 7 figure business if I actually put some media marketing behind it and some
Right.
operationalize it. And so I'm like, I could do a handyman business where it's power washing and pool service and all that kind of stuff because our clients need it and they expect a good level of service. So why not operationalize it? And then I'm like, well, then I could do roofing and plumbing and electric. And like I could go in so many ways, right? But then it takes
Yep.
me away
Yep.
from being the real estate guy. And
Right.
so the question I ask myself is, I can't do it. I'm already maxed out. Who could do it in my world? Do I have a who that I could plug into that opportunity with to partner with? And if the answer is no, then it goes on the back burner. From a marketing perspective, like there's so many things I would love to still do. And yet I'm like, okay, we look at our P&L and where are we at with our marketing budget? Do we still have some budget? Great. Then let's put in order what's going to have the maximum effort or maximum impact on my business next. And that's where we shift towards. So like we've grown to where we at. This is going to blow your mind. We've done zero ad spend other than Google listing service to show our reviews and stuff like that when people Google us. And so everything we've done has been content
Awesome.
marketing, organic. So then I'm like, honestly, so then as it kind of like we started hiring things away and I'm looking at the list, I'm like, the next person we need to hire is an ads person, like somebody who's going to
Yeah.
just repurpose content. Like if you read uh, day trading attention, like Gary talks about, hey, they take some of their best performing organic and put a budget behind it. I'm like, why aren't we doing that? And so we just
Right.
brought on an ads person. And so it was an opportunity that we had a budget for. And it was just the next thing that I had itemized on like the maximum impact on our business. And so, anyways, that's the way I think about it. Do we have a who? And then what's next on the impact chart?
Great answer. Great answer. I know one of the things I would dare to say you specialize in is nurturing a database and bringing all this attention over to your community. And I know it runs a little bit different in the real estate world. I'm not going to share with you what I understand because I will sound completely ignorant, but essentially an email list, right? And it has
Yeah.
a little bit more information on it than that. But I'm curious about just your perception for nurturing that and doing it well. I've been some people will say like emails, not dead, it's still whatever, whatever. And then other people will, just abuse it. And I
Mm.
haven't seen it done really, really well. And It sounds like you guys are doing an exceptional job with keeping your community engaged and offering just another form of service outside of your social channels. So, what have you learned over the years with nurturing an email list? I believe your open rates are pretty sick and click rates and all of that. High level, what's your philosophy with it?
Yeah, I think, well, first off is I think YouTube and Instagram and TikTok, all those are great places to get attention. But if you don't own that. And like at any given time, Meta, Google, like they could just change something to
Oh,
where you're never seen again. Right. And
yeah.
so I'm like, all right, I need to first off own something. And I feel like the email list is about as close as you can with content marketing of owning an asset. I think, a YouTube channel is an asset, but you know what I'm saying? Like if I don't get them
Sure,
off
sure.
somehow, so that's number one. And then two, something like 20% of my subscribers watch my videos on YouTube. Like it's actually not, it's mostly non-subscribers. And so I'm like, how do I make sure that if they're not watching every one of my videos, that I show up in their world somewhere else and hopefully it's value. Now, I don't think we've cracked it completely, but we do have a good open rate and we do have a lot of click throughs and a lot of people that reach out through our email newsletter to work with us. So I know it's working, but like that's actually on our 2025 list of like, how do we continue to improve that, continue to offer value? Because like there's like localized, it's interesting. Localized media is like they do horrible job with social media. Like if you look at like like the like they're just really
I
bad.
it's just I come from Arkansas, and I just was thinking about, like, our news channels and this y'all if y'all are from Arkansas and remember, I love you guys, but yeah,
But like if there
you're
was
right.
like the Arkansas Business Journal, like I don't know if there is one, but if there was one, they would have a blog and that's their thing. And then they would email people like 10 times a day. Anytime somebody
Correct.
like breaking news or whatever, right? And so eventually it just becomes noise and you unsubscribe. And so I was like, I never want to be that. And
Yeah.
it's also this interesting thing for all content creators, especially if you want to build a localized thing, is that you can take legacy media and say like, hey, according to the Orlando Sentinel, this is what they said, and here's what I think. And like, I'll get hundreds of thousands of views on articles that they may only get 100 clicks on their blog from. And so it's an interesting like change. That's not an answer to your email question, but it's kind of an interesting way of like how people are consuming news these days.
How often do you directly ask in your emails?
For business,
Yeah.
at the end, it's basically like this email was sponsored by the Pozek Group and Matic Mortgage.
It's always
So
that
like
same thing, your videos, your
the
newsletters,
product. It's
everything.
just the same dang thing. Yeah. I forget where I heard it the other day, but they were like, it's that repetition, like, right. As long as it's not like 90% of the video is an ad, but if it's just like, hey, I gave so much value that it's totally fine that you're asking me this. And so that's the way we think about it.
I'm so excited I met you, and I'm so excited we're having this conversation because we hear this, like, taught a lot, like
Mm-hmm.
high level, this works, this is what you should be doing, being able to provide value, put out content. I'm talking about Uncle G again, but
Yeah.
actually to see it in practice, like in tangible practice, that this crap works. That doesn't have to be hard CTAs all the time, that you can
No.
just top of mind, remind people who you are, what you do, keep it simple, and then just like overserve the hell out of them, and you're living proof that that works.
Yeah, absolutely works.
Damn it. We have no excuses, y'all. We have no excuses. I have a final question for you, but I want to
Sure.
thank you. You did not have to say yes to this. You're extremely busy. So thank you for being generous with your time and being
Cool.
willing to let me like pick apart your content marketing. It's fascinating.
I love it.
And I just cannot wait to continue to watch your journey from here now that I have, a little bit more insight into your world. Where would you like to direct our listeners to? What is the thing you're most excited about right now?
Probably my Instagram. My personal one is at Ken Pozek, but if you want to follow our media company, it's called the Orlando Real across all channels.
Why the Orlando Real? Why real? Where did that come from?
So it's a play on like like Orlando real estate, but then also real like IG reels. So it's REAL. So like Orlando real estate, Orlando video. So that was the idea, anyways.
I should have known real estate, Heather. Come on. Come on. All right. Ken, what is something in your life we can switch gears or we can stay in the same lane if you want to? But when I ask you the question, what are you questioning right now in your life? What comes up for you? It could be something really simple. It could be something deep AF. I don't care. But what has been on your mind lately that you don't have the answer to?
Oh man, that's a great question. That is a deep one, Heather. So It's this idea, it is this idea of going really deep instead of wide. And what does that look like? And I think that's really a big, and then also how fast do I want to grow? Like, so I think I could be 4 times faster or bigger than I am right now this year. Like, I think I could just say yes to everyone and we would be huge. But we've been really intentional to like hire from a cultural perspective. Like, we have it very down who our ideal person is. They're hungry, humble, curious, and social. And if they have those 4 things, they succeed in our world. And so, but like, is it possible to grow a lot faster by just like, they say you find the Navy SEALs by hiring the Navy. And like, is that something I want to even attempt, or do I just want to keep growing kind of the way that we are? And so, yeah, that's like some of the bigger ones that I'm trying to figure out right now.
Where do you go when you're looking for big answers like that?
I go external, and I talk to some of the people that I find as like advisors, and I probably ask a few too many people before I make a decision. And some people will feel like that means that I don't have the conviction enough myself to just make the decision. Like they say, success loves speed. But for me, I'm like, I want to make sure that I'm not, I look at like I have 53 people that count on me, and their mortgages are paid because of the business that we've created. And that means a lot to me. And so instead of just making flippant decisions, like I really want to make sure I make the right ones. And so maybe I grow a little slower because of it. But yeah, usually it's external.
Badass answer, Dave. Thank you so much for your time today.